In the greater Northeast Ohio area, hope and healing are closer than you think. At Emerge Counseling Ministries, our licensed faith-based counselors walk with you through life's challenges with compassion and understanding. 97% of our clients would refer us to a friend. 98% truly felt heard, and 84% said they're seeing real improvement. Let your journey begin today. Visit emerge.org. What if I told you there was a way to save time and find deals to help you save money? Well, Instacart delivers. Right now, they are offering free delivery on your first order over $35. They connect you with personal shoppers in your area to shop and deliver groceries from your favorite stores. Follow the link in the show notes and let Instacart know the ExEm Podcast sent you. It really helps support our show.
Welcome to the ExEm Podcast. Here is your host, mental health therapist, Matthew Kanabe.
I am very hard on myself, dealt with severe anxiety.
And it made me feel like a monster. I didn't have the energy to care.
There was just nothing more but to face what I had been running from.
I'm already an anxiety-filled mess.
It's just love. Like, it just goes back to love.
So some of us are called to various areas of ministry. It might be in a pastor role, serving at a church, or perhaps your ministry is wherever you work. All of us are called to lead our homes, but there are a select few who are called to missionary work. I've been fortunate to know many of them personally and work with them as a therapist. And as you can imagine, this is a very high calling and often comes with much adversity and struggle. To share the real aspects of being a missionary, we have the author of the books, A Caring Life and A Caring Family. He's a podcast host of the Clarity Podcast. He holds the position of World Care Director at AG World Missions. He's a missionary, a father, a husband, a new friend of mine, and a very new board member of Emerge Counseling Ministries. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Aaron Santymire.
I'm doing well, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing a little bit about who you are, allow our listeners to get an idea of who Dr. Aaron is.
So I was born and raised in the grand metropolis of Wally Ford, West Virginia. My parents, my dad was a railroader, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. At 12 years of age, I was called into missions. I said, God, you got the wrong guy. I'm from West Virginia. We barely speak English. How am I going to go to another country and speak another language? Yeah. But God continued to work on my heart. I grew up in a lower middle-class family, so I went to nursing school, became a registered nurse at a local community college, and then from there went to Southeastern, and got to Southeastern, was majoring in Bible and missions. But I knew I didn't want to go to the mission field by myself. So I began to look around, and I convinced this young lady that I was good looking and that we could do great things together. She believed it, and kind of the rest is history. So she was born and raised in Zimbabwe. Her parents were missionaries there. She was called into missions. And from that point on, she finished her schooling. We applied to be missionaries. They asked us to go to this country called Burkina Faso. I said, listen, God's called me to Africa. I don't want to go to South America. And they said, no, Burkina Faso is in Africa. So they had to get the globe out. West Virginia taught me a lot, but not geography. Yeah. And so they showed me where it was at. They said, you're going to have to go to learn French. Once again, West Virginians, we speak English okay, but my wife was super excited to get to learn French. So we moved to France. That's where our daughter Isabel was born. She's 21. We lived there for about 10 or 11 months. Then we served in Burkina Faso, specifically working with people that had HIV and AIDS to help prevent the transmission of HIV from mother to child. And then we were there for about 2.5 years, probably the toughest 2.5 years of my life. And then we ended up in Madagascar. Our son Josiah was born between them. We have 2 kids, Isabel and Josiah. We were in Madagascar for 14 years, where somebody started an orphanage. When we got there, they said, hey, you're young. I think you guys can do this. And so we inherited 43 kids, and it was about a 14-year journey of seeing those kids raised to adulthood. I worked a lot in the bush. I got my doctorate in nursing practice, specializing in skin and soft tissue infections. We worked with leprosy and a disease called chromoblastomycosis, and did a few other things. In COVID, we thought our life was going one way. It ended up going a totally different way. And in 10 days, we had to make a decision. We ended up in Nairobi, Kenya, where we served for about 3.5 years. Part of it was as an area director. The other one was developing what we call Africa House Care.
So we're going to get into your story, because I want to get into all of that.
Okay.
I'd like to talk a little bit about AG World Missions and your role there and kind of the heartbeat of what you guys are doing, because I think it's important for people who may not be aware of that. Yeah. And then we're going to spend some time in digging into that experience that you had.
Sure. Sounds good. So I'm currently, in the last few months, became the director of member care for AGWM. And I see my role, people say, what is a member? What is member care? And I say it this. I see my job is to remove the predictable and preventable causes of missionaries abandoning their call, to support and care for missionaries as they establish a church and traverse common life challenges. So that's what it's remove the barriers and these causes of missionaries abandoning their call and leaving the field, and also to support and care with them as they establish a church and they traverse common life challenges. So that's kind of what I do. I have a phenomenal opportunity to lead a team. So Wendy Wright leads for missionary kids. That's 1,500 kids, and she has a phenomenal team that she works with to care for the missionary kids. My kids are benefactors of that program, and it has been a blessing. Kara Tyler, she leads child safety. Dr. Carrie Marsh is our mental health coordinator. Ed Nye is global security, and then my wife Heather and I, we lead the wellness part. And so that's kind of what member care is, and we're really excited to see it continue to move into proactive care. And we've done reactive care, but how can we move into proactive care and care for the whole person?
Yeah, I love the idea of a lot of stuff that we talk about at Emerge. Emerge has been obviously around for 52 years. And there's been a lot of history of the reactive, the ambulance at the bottom of the hill.
Sure.
A lot of what we've been doing over the last couple of years is how do we catch them before it gets there?
Yeah.
And a lot of that work is with missionaries. Yeah. And as you know, missionary work is not easy. It is not easy work. I know right now when this podcast comes out, there will be people on the field listening to it. And I'm so thankful for that. As you and I were just talking, every continent has been represented listening to this podcast, except for Antarctica. I don't know if there's not missionaries there, but I still put the challenge out. I don't know what the prize is, but if somebody makes that happen. But my point in that is this is a very needed topic.
Sure.
And I think sometimes people sharing their experiences is helpful because when you're on the field, and I've worked with many missionaries over the years clinically, you can feel isolated. You can feel alone. You can feel like maybe you're the only one who's going through this.
Yeah.
And that's a valid feeling.
For sure.
But I also think it's helpful to hear other people's stories to kind of go, oh my gosh, Aaron felt that too, So share a little bit about your guys' experience. What was that like? What are some of the things that you learned? What are some of the things you're bringing into the role now that you're in? And God was obviously preparing you for that for a very long time. So long-winded question, but what are some of your thoughts?
So if I can just share some truths that I hold to be self-evident, and then I'll come back to my story. That all AGWM missionaries are called to establish a church among all peoples everywhere. That to establish a church among all peoples everywhere, we're called to serve in diverse contexts. That we're called to serve in diverse contexts, but we face common life challenges, right? And we've signed up for a spiritual mission with a spiritual goal using spiritual methods. And the reality of it is we voluntarily entered into a spiritual war. Yeah. And that we've entered into a spiritual war, we have a common enemy that comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And that, as I said, the challenges missionaries face are common. And like you said, sometimes we feel lonely and we feel like I'm the only one that has ever walked through something like this. We feel less than. I'll share my story. It was I felt a lot of insecurities that somehow that I didn't know how to ask for care because I thought people were going to judge me or going to be looked down upon, and so I didn't. But what I'm recognizing that AGWM proactively and reactively wants to care for missionaries, and member care is part of that. Our leadership cares. So it's not like we're the only people in the organization that care. Like the leadership cares from all the way down, but I have the phenomenal opportunity to be solely focused on missionary health. So we got to Burkina Faso. I was born and raised in West Virginia. We got there. Our daughter Isabel was about 3.5 months old. Isabel got malaria right off the bat, and so she was sick. And when I had left France, one of the last visits to the pediatrician, he said, he pulled me aside and he said, "I'm going to speak to you in English so you understand." That tells you how good my French was. Yeah. And so he said, "You're a child abuser."
We'll be right back.
In a world where life can feel overwhelming, there's a place in the greater Northeast Ohio area where people find peace, hope, and healing. Emerge Counseling Ministries. For over 50 years, Emerge continues to be a trusted faith-based counseling center offering professional mental health care with a foundation in Christian values. Whether you're struggling with anxiety, depression, grief, or simply feeling stuck, our licensed counselors are here to walk alongside you. And the impact speaks for itself. 97% of our clients say they would recommend Emerge to a friend. 98% say they truly felt understood and heard by their counselor. And 84% report that their issue is improving through the care with us. At Emerge, you're not just a case number, you're a whole person. And we are here to support your journey towards healing and growth. It's confidential, compassionate, Christ-centered care. Learn more or schedule an appointment today at emerge.org. That's EMERGE.org. Remember, you don't have to walk alone.
He said, you're taking your daughter to Africa. She's going to die, and it's going to be all your fault.
Oh, my gosh.
And so I'd been used to people saying missionaries are heroes, which I don't believe. But they just said, the people were applauding, and then all this guy's criticizing. And so we get there, Isabel gets sick, and honestly, she was listless. She was just a baby with no life in her. And I thought as a father, he was right. I've come here. And it just led to this down, and I had malaria 6 times in 9 months.
Oh, my
gosh. It affected me physiologically, but also emotionally and spiritually. I was angry at God. I was angry at the people around me. I was angry at the mission. I was angry at anybody I could be angry at. That's where I was. And one of my spiritual, the gentleman I would call my spiritual father, Mark Lehman, he comes. He was the only person that came to visit me during that time. My leader, Randy Tarr, was phenomenal. But I needed somebody that had known me before. And Mark Lehman comes. And he looks down. We're sitting in our couch. And he says, I said, my concern is I'm going to get bitter. And I said, I don't want to be a bitter missionary. And he said, well, Aaron, I don't think that's the question we need to ask. He said, the question thing we need to focus on is once you are bitter, how does God heal your heart?
Yeah.
And I needed somebody he said it in love, but I was already bitter and I was angry. I read this morning in my devotional this idea that when we sit down and we have these expectations of the story that God has called us to, and then we begin to take account of the story we're writing. And if there's a difference between those two things, it throws us off, right? And I was in a season of saying, God, you've called me to come share with these people the love of Jesus Christ, and I could barely lift my head. I was sick. There's missionaries that died there before, and I thought, I'm going to be the next one that died, and then my daughter's sick, and I wasn't being a good father. I wasn't being a good husband, nothing immoral, illegal, or unethical. I was just sick, and I was sick for about 9 months, and it really played a toll on me. Never would want to go back and live it again. Yeah. But at the same time, I went into missions thinking, West Virginians we're known, pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Sure.
Well, in that season, I couldn't find my boots. I couldn't find the straps. I couldn't find anything.
There might not have been boots at all.
And there might not have been. But, God brought me through that season. And I think that's, as I enter into member care, is this role. I don't come from it as I'm awesome and I'm going to teach everybody how to be awesome. I'm coming in saying, God has continued to walk with me. He's proven himself faithful. And I understand not everybody's unique stories, but I understand being sick and I understand these expectations. I understand, and my story was, people are supporting me to be here. And I'm sick all the time. I'm not doing it. So anyway, that's just a little bit about it. And but God, and through that season, God has been faithful, and He's given me the opportunity now to care for others, and I'm excited about it.
What was life like after the 9 months? I mean, I'm assuming after 9 months you started to heal and started to feel better. I'm hoping.
Yeah, I did.
That's a long time. What was your experience like then after that?
I think that the thing is, it probably could have been a lot quicker if I would have had the courage to reach out for help.
Oh, that's
the most courageous thing I've ever done in my life is to say, I need help and I need somebody to care for me.
Yeah.
But I had insecurities that I did not want. So I'd love to tell you it was, this line that was a linear progressive going up and to the right and everything was awesome for there.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of jagged up and downs because I didn't know how to ask for care and I didn't know how to admit that I needed help. And I did. And so it took, it probably took 3 or 4 years at least for me to get through that season. Probably could have been a lot quicker if I would have invited people, trusted people into my life. and said, I need somebody to walk with me. I need you to not justify or all those things. I need you to walk with me and care for me. I just didn't have the courage to do it.
So how old of a guy were you at that point?
Let me get the years correct. So I would have got to Burkina in 2004, and so I would have been, do the math, I'd have been 27.
Okay, so at this stage, if, and this is a very clinical thing for me to do, but it's where my head goes.
Okay.
If at this stage in life, if you were able to go back to that 27-year-old,
sure,
what would you share with him today that you feel like would have been beneficial for him to know then that might be helpful for somebody who's 27 on the field now?
Sure. So, and I wrote a book called A Caring Family, and in that I outlined, it's basically a book to me at that stage of my life.
Yeah,
and Arthur Brooks says, you can choose to be unique and special or loved and known. And when I was 27, I was trying to be unique and special.
Yeah.
And by trying to be unique and special, I was not being loved and known, because I wanted to put on this idea that my life was perfect, and if I would let people in and know that I was struggling, then I couldn't be unique and special, right? I was walking in this balance of not living in sin, not doing anything immoral, illegal, unethical, but I just did not want to let people into my life because I thought, I'm trying to be unique and special, and that's going to go away if I really let them know who much. So my encouragement to my younger self would be, focus on being loved and known.
Yeah.
Allow people into your life and walk in that on people you trust, and have the courage to do that. And that's basically the story of myself. And focus on virtues. Don't focus on character, right? Not focus on capacities and things what people are going to say. Anyway,
do you think that because a lot of people in the podcast know my story. I grew up in the music industry. I started touring when I was 15, and I think if I were able to go back to my younger self, it was not that I had a pride issue, but I just feared being humble, like humility. And during that time, I have a much easier time now at this phase in life. I think you and I are probably in the same age range of going, I don't have all the answers. I don't understand it. The longer I go, the more I realize I don't know. And when clients get to me, I know for certain they've exhausted all of their resources out, and I praise them for their strength to know when to get help.
Sure.
And I think it's super important. That to me is actually a sign of more maturity than the opposite of that, which it sounds like both you and I experienced, in that early adulthood range. What are your thoughts on that concept and that idea?
I encourage people to reach out for care months before you think you need it, right? And that's what being another encouragement for my younger self is not to wait to the point that I think that I need it, because that's probably pushing the edge. But I agree. I think there's spiritual maturity involved in all that, and I think I can look back and judge my younger self. That's probably unfair. The reality of it is, I have these 20-some years since then that God's grown, I've developed, and have that spiritual maturity. But at the same time, if people can learn from my mistakes and the challenges that I went through, man, that's a blessing.
Right. You and I both wouldn't be the people we are today.
Sure.
God uses that, and I think, the things I've learned, I don't grow when things are copacetic and everything's great. I grow through adversity. And if we don't, and I still experience adversity, but God's growing me in different ways than He was when I was in my 20s. And I think that's imperative and just part of life. When you look at Scripture and you look at pivotal people in the Bible, it's through their adversities and the struggles. And you look at, the one I go to all the time is Paul. It's like, my gosh, like this guy teaches me every day about how to triumph in some of the most hard conditions and find joy. That's where it was like, how do I find joy and how do I find contentment when everything's a mess?
It's true.
And I think a lot of times, we do tons of missionary work, and I've worked with so many of them. That idea of your heart turning to bitterness, and it's a natural. I get it, and I'm sure sometimes you would feel like, God, where are you?
Oh, for sure, man.
You sent me here. Where are you? But that's part of the I think the experience of spiritual maturity and growth, all of those things.
And I think the reality of it is, I would love to say my 27-year-old self knew how dependent I needed to be on God. But there was a lot of ego in me that said, God, you're kind of lucky to have me on your team. And now I know that's heretical. I understand it. But if I'm going to be transparent or authentic with you, there was something in me that thought, God, you got a good guy. Come into Burkina. And you know what? But I think you talked about humbling. I was humbled and humiliated all at the same time. They say you can choose one or the other, right? But I was kind of both at the same time. And walking through that process, God's tender care, He put Burkina Bay brothers and sisters. I shared about Randy Tarr, my leader. I had people around me that were trying to care. I had to be open for them to care for me. And the other thing, that was the thing, I was keeping people at a distance because I just didn't want to let them in. And so if I would have known if I would have known then what I know today is trusted people. Allow some trusted people into your life and let them in and let them know the true who you are. I had somebody come up to me about 4 or 5 years ago, and they said to me something about, hey, some comment that really caught me off guard, and I don't want to over spiritualize it, but basically they said, hey, your life's awesome, and your family, your and education and all this. And I walked away from the gate. We were talking at a gate. I walked from away, and the Lord really convicted me that you're putting up projecting this, that somehow you have it all together. And that's just really not true. And when are you going to come to a point and just allow to be authentic with people so they get the same person wherever they're at? And not trying to put on this facade. So I think that's some of the life challenges.
Thank you for going there. Thank you for being authentic, because what you just said, I think, is imperative, because I think we all go through a form of that in one way or another. The problem with that is it causes others to stumble. We live in a world of comparison.
That's a good word.
And when you're projecting, I've got it all figured out, but the truth is you're just as much of a mess as somebody else, then other people are looking at that going, what's wrong with me? Because he's got it all figured out. Now, you and I kind of grew up in an era where it was a little bit different than maybe our kids are growing up now, because they have this instantaneous social media where that comparison thing becomes even more intensely blown out of control. And it's like, I'll never be like that person, because you're only seeing the best version of those things, but you're always comparing to the worst part of yourself.
That's a good word.
And I think when we have conversations like this, I think this is why podcasts are great. I think this is why, when I try to go out and speaking engagements, I'm sure you do too, I'm just raw. And it's just like, okay, and you're just speaking to a group of people, and they're like, why am I listening to this guy? But the truth is that because that's what they need to hear, you know?
And we connect, right? We connect with people that are authentic. You really do. I remember people's stories. I grew up in church from 0 until now. I don't remember a whole lot of sermons. I like the text, right?
Right.
But I remember the people, when people would share their stories and how God intervened in their life. I can go back and listen to it. Just my memory. And I think that's kind of where I'm at today. I share frequently. I have education, degrees, all this jazz. But when I go to Chick-fil-A and show up, they don't care. Right? They still charge me the same for my Southwest grilled chicken salad with creamy salsa dressing. It's still the same price. They're not really impressed. And so probably in this season of my life is, I don't need to really be impressed with myself, and I don't need to try to impress people. Just be who God's created me to be. Kind. I'm not saying just be irritable, but to be a kind person. Care for people they've come along with, and then trust God with the outcomes. I really thought when I was younger that I controlled a lot more outcomes than I really do. I don't. God's in control.
For sure.
I'm not. But when I was younger, I thought, if I do all this, it's a math equation. It's really not.
I love your Chick-fil-A analogy. I do a similar one. It's like when I come home, my kids don't care. They are not impressed at all. It's like all the work I've done my whole life and things I've achieved. Your kids are the best litmus test ever, because it's like, whatever, Dad.
That's right.
Can you share with me a little bit from your perspective, because you've been in this world for a long time, from the early 2000s to now we're in 2025, what are some of the differences or similarities you're seeing in missions work?
I think the human condition is pretty similar. You know what I mean? I think some of the challenges or differences would be, there's a lot of more connectivity back to where you came from. So it's easier to be, if you're looking for affirmation, it's easier to say, hey, I can still get affirmation on social media or here, so I can search for affirmation there rather than being present where you're at. And so I think that's a difference. Today, you can get a lot of that. When I was in Burkina, we connected like 6 kilobytes per second, and you got the line for 6 minutes. If you were looking for affirmation on the internet, you were in trouble. You'd be a very frustrated person. I think there has been an encouragement as we continue to grow, not judging the past. I'm not a person that looks back, because in 20 years, people are going to look back at me as the member care director, and they're going to say, Aaron, like, why didn't you not see this? You could have did this better. So I'm honoring the past, but recognizing today care is available. An AGWM, care is available. It's championed. It's encouraged. Which when I was a younger missionary, I just didn't know how to access it, and it wasn't championed. I just didn't know about it. And I think this move towards preventative care. At the same time, we are there to establish a church. And I share with people, if you want to be healthy and you don't want to establish a church, probably need to stay in the United States to do that, right? But if you want to establish a church and be healthy while you do it, AGWM's the place to do that. We have things in place so people can get care for, whether that's mental health, whether that's for your kids, whether that's marriage, family, serving solo. I think I have become more aware today of those who serve solo that are single on the field. I was solo before, but I was never a missionary. Right? There are challenges that are unique, and I'm growing in my understanding of that. And so I think those challenges are there. There's some beauties to it, but there's also some challenges. And so as we navigate into the future and we continue to want to see the church established among all peoples everywhere, recognizing that proactive and reactive care are available, there is more in AGWM today to care for missionaries than there ever has been.
So if somebody's listening right now, I'm picturing a 14, 15-year-old kid, and they're thinking maybe the Lord's putting on their heart missionary work is what because what you just said, I think, is valid. I don't think everyone is called into this work. I think there are people called into all different areas of ministry. But if there is that kid that's listening right now, and it's like, what are some things, one, they should be thinking about, and two, what would be first steps?
I would say number one is stay out of debt. I mean, that's what they told me.
Everybody should listen to that.
But I think that's right. If you get a ton of debt, man, it's really hard to go overseas. That's one. I think focus on character. Continually spend time in God's Word and allow God to transform your character, right? You can have all the capacities that you want. You can have all these skills and talents, but if your character's not there to support it in those times. So if 14 or 15-year-old talking to myself at 14 or 15 is, Aaron, concentrate on character. Become more like Christ and continue to follow that, growing in discernment and hearing His voice and what that looks like. At 14 or 15, I didn't know what that meant, right? I went to youth camp and felt, but what did that mean? I think having a mentor, somebody that has been in missions, to hear from them some of their lessons learned. And I think staying out of debt, asking God to continue to grow and transform your character, put yourself in opportunities for that character to grow and develop, focus on spiritual maturity, spending time in God's Word, recognizing that as you take obedient steps, if it's God's will, you'll end up there. And if you don't, and you're obedient and you do all those other things, we have to trust in Him that was not necessarily the call that He had for our life.
I think that the thing that I've noticed in working with young people or whatever, missionary work can be romanticized very easily. Do you know what I mean by that?
100%.
But it's real work.
It is.
I mean, you were down for 9 months. And I don't think when you're thinking about the romanticized version of this, it's like, I'm going to go into this country, I'm going to save people by the thousands, I'm going to build a church. But that's great. And I think that's a motivation. But I also think there's a reality to it that I think these conversations are so important, because if you're called into it,
I think setting an appropriate expectation is important.
Sure.
Because when you have expectations that are not meeting reality, that's when we have dissonance.
Oh, for sure. I say and some of the challenges with expectations are the unconscious ones that you don't even know that you think are going to happen until they don't happen. And then you're like, well, I thought it was going to go like this. And unrealistic, unspoken, unagreed upon, unconscious, all of those expectations, if you can begin to play those out, it helps a ton. But also, when I was 14, 15, I wasn't wise enough to think about all those things.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the other thing is there's a huge difference between going on a trip and living there.
Yeah.
And I didn't see the difference when I was
doing
younger.
missions trips.
You go, and I'm not criticizing. I think it's valuable.
Absolutely.
But to go and come home is one thing. But to go and stay and live, all those things that you romanticize, at some point are going to grate.
Yeah.
And you're going to go through that period of transition and go through the challenges. God will be faithful. He will walk you through those. But having the resilience to be able to push through those when it's easier to come home. When I got to Burkina, one of the gentlemen that was a blessing, his name was Deltar, he was there, and he said, Aaron, I was struggling, obviously, and he said, your biggest problem is that airplane. He said, because you can book a ticket and you can be on a plane tonight.
Yeah.
He said, but you need to continually seek God's face and continue to build that resilience. And resilience is not something that happens quickly, right? It's not instantaneous. No. It takes a lot of life experience, evaluated life experience to build up that resilience and people speaking and encouraging you in your life. The other thing I would say to my 14 or 15-year-old self is, if you want to be married, find someone who has a call to the mission field also. If that's really, you want someone that has a call, they would stay when you want to leave.
Yeah.
And if you find, and that was a challenge for me when I was younger, is like I dated other people, but I really wanted somebody that had the same call, and that's been a blessing. My wife Heather, she has a call. God's called her, and the days that I've wanted to leave, we're staying. And the days she's wanted to leave, I've been able to stay. So who you marry, those compressed amount of times, man, they affect your whole life. But I think that's you look at 18 to 25, you're making a lot of decisions in a compressed amount of time that impact your life trajectory. Yeah. So even at 14 or 15, don't start dating somebody that doesn't have a call.
That's a great call. Hey, can you mention your book again?
I have 2 books. One's called A Caring Family, and then there's one called A Caring Life.
Okay.
And those are 2 books.
Amazon, I'm assuming?
Yep, they're on Amazon. And A Caring Family is the book, is how we can care better and love longer. The lessons that I wish that I would have learned when I was just a young father and a new husband. A Caring Life is just kind of my opus on how that we can change the trajectory of an uncaring world, and some steps that we can take to care for and love our neighbors as we move forward.
It's great. My friend, thank you so much for spending time. It's been great getting to know you. This was a great conversation. Really, really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, man.
Well, if you have thought of missionary work, or know you're called to the field, or even if you are someone who can support those who are, through giving and certainly prayer, if that is the case, I hope you've enjoyed hearing Aaron's story and it helped you gain some insight into this area of ministry that can be so rewarding, but often still comes with a heavy burden. Hey, well, thanks for listening to our podcast. If you would take a second right now and give us a comment in Apple Podcasts or in the new feature in Spotify, it would be greatly appreciated. Then hit those 5 stars. It just helps us reach a wider audience. So thank you. Well, until next time, or when our Savior comes, God bless.